Hey, welcome to our Wednesday study. We are in the book of Acts chapter 9, and if you actually go back to chapter 8, even chapter 7, you're going to see that there's a man named Stephen who is martyred. And standing there in the presence of his death is a man named Saul who is giving approval to his death. And then Saul ends up persecuting the church, sending people out of Jerusalem into Judea and Samaria, and thus fulfilling that promise that Christ asked the disciples to be a part of, to go and be a witness in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Well, the ends of the earth is going to begin soon here, as Saul is going to be transformed into Paul, and he's going to write most of our New Testament. So let's begin in this conversion piece, because this is quite fascinating. Meanwhile, Saul was still bearing out his murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and he asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found anyone there who belonged to the way, that is, a Christian, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light fell from heaven and flashed all around him. He fell to the ground and he heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" Can you imagine Jesus showing up and just blasting him off his horse and asking the simple question, "Why are you persecuting me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I'm Jesus, whom you're persecuting," he replied. "Now, get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." Now, the men traveling with Saul stood there speechless. They heard the sound, but they did not see anyone. And Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. For they led him by the hand to Damascus. For 3 days he was blind, and he did not eat or drink. Now, in Damascus, God is also calling another person to be a part of Saul's story, Ananias. So he calls Ananias. He says, "I'm going to send Saul to you." And Ananias says, "Heck no, I don't want Saul. He is a man who's killing Christians everywhere and persecuting them and putting them in jail." And he says, "No, I'm chosen him as an instrument to carry my name before the Gentiles and their kings and before the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name." Now, this sounds so crazy, but this is God saying, "Look, Ananias, don't stand in the way of my plan. I am doing something so great, and you as a believer and follower understand that what needs to happen to fulfill my promises. That I'm sending people as witnesses to Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, and now the ends of the earth, and I'm going to use Saul to do it. Now, most importantly, Ananias, I'm going to use you to teach Saul." So Ananias works with Saul, and he trains him and teaches him. He takes him to the disciples in Damascus, and together Saul is becoming open to this amazing experience of the Holy Spirit in his lives, and he truly is transformed. It's one of the most beautiful stories about how a life can be changed. And in doing so, verse 20, all of a sudden, they're with the disciples in Damascus, and at once Paul began to preach in the synagogues that Jesus is the Son of God. In verse 21, all those who heard him were astonished. "Isn't this the man who raised havoc in Jerusalem among those who called on his name? And hasn't he come here to take them as prisoners and chief priests?" Yet Saul grew more and more powerful and baffled the Jews living in Damascus by proving that Jesus is the Christ. You know, one of the greatest ways we can baffle people is by showing them how much we love Jesus, how much we understand the scriptures, and how much we're allowing them to penetrate our head and our heart, that our actions are different. You know, this is a way in which you and I can show people how amazing God is. So as you read this particular chapter this week, I want you to experience what God is doing. It seems like he takes us in times of just really great special moments where things are going well, and then things get difficult. And then they go well, and then they get difficult. You know what, my friends? It seems like life is like that all the time. We're in a place where God is doing amazing things if we just open our eyes to seeing it. Now, the question for you is, what do you want your life to be? Are you willing to follow God the way Saul is? Are you willing to change the way you are and allow God to transform you from the inside out? It's much easier said than done. But for those of us that are willing to step into it, you won't be disappointed. You're going to see the glory of God in your life. And what we're going to find through the rest of this Bible is Paul's adventures and how they play out and how they help to transform other people's lives. Paul has one of the richest lives you could imagine, all because he trusted God. May it be so with the rest of us. Go in God's peace, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday and on Sunday.